What's up, everybody? Welcome into a post-season edition
Mm.
of SSPN Live, Ethan. We made it. We made it
Oh.
through the season. The tank Spurs, the 22-60 Spurs. But guess what, Ethan? Even though we've got the best odds, or we're tied for the best odds to get the number one pick and all the other good picks, we're not the worst of the worst, Ethan. And Mike
Thank you,
Jimenez
Detroit.
was wrong by 3 games.
That's all we can ask for. That's the biggest
The
dub.
Rockets have more talent, but they still were worse.
Mm. 1, 2, 3. That makes a W, Jude. That makes a W
It
over Mike
does.
Jimenez.
Yes, it does. But no, we've missed you guys. The last post game we did was against the Kings, which was a Spurs win, which was very rare. But we saw 2 more at the end of the season, Ethan, in the last week, and I was at one of them at the one win in Austin, the Thursday game. I was glad I went to that one because Minnesota, was actually playing legitimate people. Instead, I got to see the Eubanks versus Keldon show or the Eubanks versus Zach show. That was such a fun game, man. I hope they keep doing the Austin thing. I don't want them to move to Austin. Obviously, I want them to stay in SA. There's a lot of buzz. I've been hearing about that. RC Buford kind of shut that down in his press conference there. But still, man, I hope they continue to do that because one, the Moody Center is an amazing facility, brand new, just an awesome stadium for basketball. I'm real jealous of my girlfriend. I'm jealous of her being a UT fan and the fact that she gets to go to season tickets there. Like, because LSU's basketball stadium hasn't been renovated in like decades. Anyways, but it's a super, super nice facility. And it was such a fun environment. And it was so cool because it was like big enough to make it feel like it was packed, but it was a little bit smaller than the AT&T Center, which made it just feel, like that much more intimate, if you will. And getting to see Drew go off was super cool. Getting to see him snipe, that definitely, I was reminiscing a little bit. I was like, this is what me and Ethan were talking about when we said he might be able to play the 4 back in the day. I was thinking about all of our Eubanks takes, watching him play well in that one. But really, obviously getting to see Julian Champagnie firsthand, the way that he just pulls up in people's faces is incredible. But really, I think the thing that stood out to me the most in that game, Ethan, and this has kind of been a theme throughout the year, if any of us, any of you guys have been watching this whole year, and that's just that Keldon Johnson showing up in the clutch. Wasn't shooting well the whole game, but by the end of the night, he had at least, it was like 22 or 24 points. I think he had 24, went into the fourth quarter with like 10 or 12 and took over, got everybody hype, got Austin hype. He was yelling, he was being Keldon. And that's the thing that I've noticed this year in the games. Obviously, he's had some bad games here and there too. But the reason that he's averaged 22 points throughout this season is because even in the games where he struggled for the first 3 quarters, he always finds a way to get, over that 20-point hump in the fourth quarter. And that's led to a lot of wins this year, I say a lot of wins. The wins that we did have, that had a lot to do with it. Just shout out to him and in the fact that he's able to continue scoring in the clutch consistently throughout this season. Because if he didn't score the way that he did in that game against the Trailblazers, the Spurs wouldn't have won. Got to give a shout out to everybody else who had 20. Zach had 20 plus, KBD had 20 plus, and of course Champagnie had 20 plus. But Keldon playing in that game was the reason the Spurs won. And that's been the story this year when it comes to sitting all the guys with injuries. But that's my rant on the Austin game. It was just so awesome, and I hope they do that moving forward. Maybe, make it 4 games, something like that. It was just, it was a nice little switch up. That's what Zach Collins called it in his pregame press conference. So love to see that. And the Trey got another triple-double there too. So just super fun. Loved what I saw kind of that last week of the year.
Yeah, I'm sure the energy was crazy too because Austin is a San Antonio Spurs city. Like, they are fans of Spurs basketball, but they hardly ever get a chance to support them because they're in San Antonio. Obviously, 2-hour drive, not really trying to drive that drive. So I'm sure the energy level was just off the hook. Great win, high energy. I'm not going to repeat everything that you just said. But the last week, there were some difficulties, obviously. Phoenix beat us 115-94. Minnesota 151-131. The Minnesota game, there was just absolutely no defense. Like, it was just whoever wants to make a layup can make a layup. Anthony Edwards had a great game. And they were kind of like still wanting to win, because they were in that
Right.
7, 8, 9,
And
10
we sat
range.
Keldon. Like,
Yeah, we didn't play Keldon, and Portland was just two bad teams going at it, and we ended up being the slightly better team. But they've been injury bugged the whole year. I mean,
mhm.
Dame is obviously just being shut down, but Yusuf Nurkic has been hurt off and
No
on.
Anthony Simons either.
No Anthony Simons, and Jeremy Grant's been hurt a lot as well. He didn't
Forget
play.
about him. Yeah.
Yeah, he was supposed to be basically their second best player, and he's really been
Mhm.
injured a lot. And he's going to be unrestricted free agent this season. That's neither here nor there. We're not talking about that. And then obviously Dallas, we beat them 138-117, and there were definitely a lot of positives to take from that.
Yeah.
But also Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving didn't play, as well as a couple
Level
other
of
starters.
competition.
And Dallas was openly tanking. Now they're taking on a bunch of, bad publicity because of Jason Kidd basically admitting that the front office was like, "We're going to lose this game, these last couple
Yeah.
of games in the season."
And now they've got an investigation.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but 21-19 from Dominic Barlow is like the biggest headline of that game. Where did that come from? 8 for
My
11.
guy.
My guy would just went off, and then 20 points from Malachi, 23 from Mamu. Like the rest of the squad stepped up, and Champagny kept on his scoring front with 16. Keita was
Mhm.
17, and you were texting me a little bit. Keita Bates Diop has grown into I'm sure we'll talk about this more later. Has grown into a really terrific um, role player for us, and he has a lot more to his game than any of us were giving him credit for when we initially signed him, and going into this
Mhm.
season as well. Because we were like, oh, he's a perimeter defender. He's long, but he has
Uh-huh.
no offensive game. And he has grown into somebody that can really finish amongst the trees. He's kind of tricky with his up and unders and his pump fakes. And he's a very intelligent player. And he's become kind of a sniper for us as well at
Mhm.
times. He's kind of streaky, but when he's open, it's going down.
Right.
So shout out to him. He's really become, and I think it's also a confidence thing because toward the end of the year with Sohan sitting out, Keldon sitting out from time to time, Devin not being there, he's really kind of had to step up just
Yep.
out of necessity, and he's slowly kind of taken it upon himself to be more aggressive, and that really goes for a lot of these guys. Trey Jones as well,
Yeah.
Dominic Barlow, obviously, Champagny, Mamu. So we'll get into it later, but we're gonna have another problem on our hands, Drew, where we have a lot of dudes that have
Yep.
played into having minutes going into next
Yeah.
season, but not all of them can, obviously. So
Yeah, for sure. I talked a little bit about that on the video I did today. It was just I named it San Antonio Spurs offseason preview. I went
mhm.
over Bobby Marks' article on ESPN Plus, just breaking down the Spurs offseason. So y'all go check that out if you haven't. But just to talk about KBD, like you were saying, that's exactly what he said in the press conference, I believe after the Blazers game. Maybe it wasn't the Blazers game, but it was in some recent press conference at the end of the year where he had another, close to 20-point scoring night. He said, like, since I've gotten here, like Pop has really given me the confidence
Mhm.
to, of what I can do as a player. And these situations that he's had recently, as you just referenced, because of the injuries, where he's gotten more of an opportunity to basically, be the main scorer in an NBA game, which usually, minus the circumstances, that wouldn't happen. That's really allowed him to grow and evolve his game. And like you said, we were texting about it, and it's kind of funny because, I mean, this was a two-way guy.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he wasn't, I'm about to say he was Dom Barlow back then. Like, obviously it's a little bit different circumstances because he had been in the league for a little bit with Minnesota, but like he was in that position, like, let's just give this guy a try and see what happens. And, he's worked himself into, like like you said, we have a lot of guys, especially at that four position that we like, where we're going to have to make some decisions because, we picked up Mamu late in the year, not to
Mhm.
get too into the weeds on this, but we picked up Mamu late in the year. Obviously Barlow, had a great performance to end the year, strong, really finished to the year overall, showed some promise in the G League. But then you've got Sohan, but then you've still got KBD, like, does somebody out of, like, I mentioned the possibility in the video today, maybe we do bring all four back, but maybe we decide to do something different. But the point is, going back to KBD, all of these guys' progression has made that decision difficult,
Mhm.
right? More difficult and less clear than it was, before the trade deadline.
And I'm a fan of it, to be honest. I know it's like a difficult decision, but
But
going
that's what
into
we need to
training camp,
do.
yeah, now going into this offseason, going into training camp, Mamu, KBD, even our boy Barlow to an extent, they're like, I have an opportunity here
Right.
to be a rotational player next year. So they better get their butts in the gym and start trying to beat each other out. And I'm all about competition. I think Sohan's a little bit safer than them, obviously, because he's a lottery pick and
Hmm.
he showed
Right.
us pretty much for the whole year that he's the starting caliber
Right.
power forward.
He
But as
was our
far as
top
that,
10 pick. Like,
yeah, yeah, we're building not around him, but he's definitely a cornerstone for the
right.
rest of for the rest of his career. Hopefully, knock
Mhm.
on wood. But those other three dudes, I mean, it's up for grabs. And you mentioned Barlow. Has he come back on a two-way? Has he played himself into a guaranteed deal? Could he get more money elsewhere? I don't know if he's going to get more money
Right.
elsewhere, but it's interesting debate for sure.
Yeah, especially with KBD, he's one of the few guys on the roster or the few free agents that we have on the roster.
Hmm.
Him and Gorgie are the only two free agents who are unrestricted. Um, and I think, especially with how much we really like KBD and how much he knows the system, how
Yeah.
long he's been around, the fact that he's still young, only like 25, 26, something like that. I mean, I think he's definitely a pop favorite for
I do too.
sure. So I really am high on the prospects of him coming back. You never know, especially with how the draft plays out. And
Hmm.
Pop's most recent comments about Zach being the 5 for the future for the Spurs moving forward. That was an interesting article. If you guys didn't see, Pop basically said, like, hey, moving forward, we got our guy at center. We really like Zach's development and how young he is. This is all the stuff that you and me have been talking about since we signed him. And a
Hmm.
lot of this, once again, goes back into the injury. You've seen the progression this year, and that's because of the fact that he finally got to play like a 100% season. Like, and
Yeah.
he probably wasn't really at 100% to start the season, but this was the first time he's been fully healthy, can like start to build muscle again and just be like, the normal health that an NBA player is usually at. And I think that had a lot to do with his progression. And the comments that Pop made, I think we kind of talked about it this year. Like, is Zach at his ceiling? Pop was alluding to his ceiling being much higher.
Yeah.
And obviously we're Spurs fans, but at the same time, it's like, dude, I'm gonna take Greg Popovich's advice over my own when it comes to seeing the potential in a player. So the fact that we're gonna get him on whatever contract we pay him next year, the
Hmm.
most it would be is 7 million. That's gonna be a steal next year, and he's another person to watch out for an extension this offseason. Devin is the main one that you're probably gonna see, but technically, get this, the other two people on the Spurs roster that are eligible for an extension, Ethan, are Devontae Graham and Kem Birch. So I don't think we got to worry about them.
No, I don't think so either.
But Zach is the other one. So I would look out for Zach and Devin this offseason whenever it comes to extensions.
I think they're both extension. Like the
Yeah.
Spurs are notorious for extending our guys early. Not notorious. I think it's a good thing because
Yes.
we've seen what happens to other teams who are like, I don't think you're ready
Right.
yet. We'll give it to you next year, and then that guy just has a crazy year. Like we
Hmm.
pretty much have gotten everybody like really
Yeah.
affordable. Like
Yeah.
Kawhi was on a great deal when we extended him, and same with Dejounte and
Keldon's
Derek,
deal that he just got's
Keldon.
pretty good.
So let's pay them now. They definitely deserve it. They both had career years. And moving forward, they'll definitely be important pieces for us.
Yeah, and you definitely want to get those like contract extensions because that allows you to dip into the cap a little
Yes.
bit, like the tax, if you will.
Hmm.
It essentially like allows you to eat up your cap space, but like still have your cap space, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, do you want to get into these awards, Ethan? Any final thoughts on kind of the end of the year? I mean, I guess I'll give you some actually. I'm going to ask you the question and then answer it for you.
Okay.
Um, no, but just wanted to talk about that Dallas game a little bit more. Not even Dom Barlow, but like Malachi. Who else? Oh, Mamu, of course.
Mamu went
Mamu.
crazy.
Got to talk about Malachi and Mamu getting 20 plus in that game. The threes from Mamu, we already know what Malachi can do as we've seen it all year. He was just
Hmm.
back in that position on Sunday. But love to see those three guys. Like, what a bit. I know the team that they were playing, like they took care of business. They did what they were supposed to do in that game against those Mavericks without like their entire starting lineup playing.
Yeah.
But still, like for Mamu, Dom, and Malachi to lead us to a win, all of three of those guys getting 20 plus under any circumstances is still like wild to see and a good thing.
Absolutely. And you know what's funny about the Barlow thing? I forgot that this was against Dallas. They suck on interior defense, interior like
And their good
rebounding.
people weren't even playing.
Yeah, and so no wonder an extremely athletic 6'10", 6'11" forward slash center was able to get all those rebounds and putbacks and stuff. So shout out to him though for knowing like, okay, there's a weakness here. I'm gonna take advantage of it. Same
Yeah.
with Mamu. He had 11 boards.
Mm-hmm.
Champagny had 10 boards.
Oh my gosh. Look at and I love to see that because he struggled shooting to start a little bit. He ended up
Mhm.
hitting some threes later. But man, yeah. And speaking of him, we haven't even talked about him.
Uh,
Like we
he's
need to
another one.
sign him, bro.
Yeah, we do.
I'm convinced. I know that it was you could say it was against subpar competition or it was the end of the year.
But it was consistent.
Dude, like I saw that firsthand, man. And I told y'all on here, like when you go watch his G League tape, the way that he played, he scored in two ways, dude. And it's cutting, like on layups or threes. And that's exactly what he did for the Spurs. Like I said, I saw it firsthand. He was pulling up no hesitation in people's faces. Like he would just get the ball, catch and release. And I love that confidence.
Mhm.
And it's also good, like the lack of hesitation. Like,
Yes.
how much does that hurt shooters, Ethan? Like, how
Yeah.
many times have we seen that watching basketball growing up? Like, so the fact that he doesn't have that hesitation, and we've seen it translate from the G League to the NBA.
Yes.
Like I said, I'm just like, get him off a two-way, get him on an actual contract now.
Absolutely. I'm thinking long term. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm thinking 3 years, maybe like a team option, but I think he has the potential. I love Doug McDermott, my hand to God. I think
right.
he's a terrific role player for us, and he will be next year as
He's the
well.
replacement.
He's the replacement. He can learn from Doug McDermott. He has a higher ceiling as far as being a defender. He's clearly more athletic the way he can finish at the rim, but he has similar games, and he can be in that similar mold. So we won't lose anything as Doug begins to age.
Swatcho, you're on the
Swacho
same
gets it.
wavelength as us. For those of y'all listening on podcast, he says Champagne might be a McDermott successor that fits the timeline well, which is
Hmm.
exactly what Ethan was just saying.
And they can even become like okay, well, we're going to go with Doug. You miss your first two shots, Champagne, you're in. If you
Yep.
miss your first two shots, Doug, you're back. Like just whoever's hot can play, and whoever's not will sit on the bench.
For sure, for sure. I'm trying to think if there is there anything else I'm missing from the end of the season, Ethan, before we jump into these awards.
Romeo, it was fun.
Somebody cue the Titanic music for Romeo, man.
Have fun being a player
He
development coach at Indiana.
he proved us all wrong though. We thought he was getting cut before the season. He's making it through,
After
baby.
the season. Oh my god.
Oh my gosh. All right, let's get into these awards, Ethan. So just for you guys watching, we have some fun awards at the end, but at first we're just gonna do like the normal NBA awards, but specifically to the Spurs. So we'll start off with the big one, Ethan, and this is MVP. I'll
Mm.
start out, and I have Keldon Johnson. This could have been Devin Vassell if he, didn't get injured this season and didn't have that surgery on his knee. If we had more tape, it could have been him. You never know. But because of the circumstances and Keldon playing more and averaging 22 points, and also, like I ranted about a little bit earlier, just being so clutch for the Spurs this year in the fourth quarter. There's really not much else to say. There's a reason why he's going to start getting paid $20 million starting next season.
Yeah, I think it's an obvious choice, Keldon Johnson. I mean, leading scorer, clutch player, clearly the leader of this team, high energy, never lost momentum.
Yeah.
In the middle of losses, doesn't matter how many that losing streak that we had toward the end of the season, he kept pushing hard the entire time and willing his team to getting into some close games that we really shouldn't have been in.
Yeah.
And he improved. I think last year he was 17 points per game. He jumped up to 22. He improved as a ball handler. He improved in his mid-range game. He could post up a little bit more. Sure, his three-point shot fell off a little bit, but it was still a threat. And he could
Much
hit
better.
it when it counted.
Still improved.
Yes.
Right.
And so I'm looking forward to even another jump from him. I think maybe defensively, I think continuing to improve as a ball handler and as a playmaker. And he even talked about that, playmaking being a thing that he really wants to work on getting better at, especially when Devin was out. He had to kind of take over those duties.
Yeah.
So I really don't have a negative to say about Keldon Johnson.
No, especially considering the circumstances. There really isn't too much to say. The one thing I guess I'll hit on, because this is something everybody's going to talk about a lot, is the drop off in 3-point percentage. If you watch the video today that I did, once again, they mentioned how at Christmas, when he started off the season just red hot from three, he was averaging 26 points per game, which is 4 points more than 22. So really, I mean, that's about, you throw in an extra 3 with improved percentage, and that's what his average would be. So that's just another thing to keep in mind. I'm not sure what the reason for the drop off was. Even now that we're sitting here at the end of the season, I still haven't figured it out. But what I would like to think is that he'll just continue to be in the gym in the off season, and
Mm-hmm.
just, get it to where it can be like it was at the beginning of the season
Mm-hmm.
consistently throughout the entire season. Because if he does that, then the scoring is going to jump as well.
Absolutely.
Alrighty, Ethan. Well, we'll move on to defensive player of the year. I'll let you start
Mm.
out with this one.
This was a really tough choice. I'm going to go with Jeremy Sohan because he was drafted because of his defensive versatility. He proved that it was not a fluke, something that, because a lot of times guys are great defenders in college because they're guarding substandard players. But he was taking the primary matchup every single night. LeBron, Kawhi, John Morant, it didn't matter. Guard, center, power forward, whatever it was. He was able to guard them. He didn't lock them up every time, but he improved slowly. We talked about that Julius Randle game where Julius hit him with 2 rip throughs right in back-to-back possessions. The third one, he got an offensive foul. It's those little things that he slowly
Mm-hmm.
got better at. And when he wasn't on the court, it was clear that we were missing a defensive anchor.
Mm-hmm. Especially when he first got hurt, bro. I
Yes.
remember the glaring difference. It was so tough to watch that stretch.
Yeah, it was. And so without him there, that's enough proof. I mean, Devin Vassell had kind of an argument, but he was out too many games,
Yeah.
and Jakob Poeltl obviously was traded, but he also could have had an argument had he stayed the whole year.
Right. And so my pick's also Jeremy Sohan for defensive player of the year for the Spurs. And it's just bluntly because of kind of what we were just talking about, but
Yeah.
also his versatility as a defender. Like, even though Devin did average a steal in the 56 games he played this year, I think it was around there. Might have been a little bit less than that, but he did average a steal this year. 56 is actually what Sohan played. That's the number that was sticking in my mind. But he was just the most versatile. Like, Sohan can guard guys that Devin can't.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
Sohan has the potential, if we're playing a small ball team, to be able to guard 1 through 5. We knew that the thing that immediately translated to the NBA for Sohan was his defense.
Mhm.
We saw that from game 1, where his offense, we obviously saw it flourish, and his free throw shooting and all that stuff, but that took a little bit more time, where his defense immediately translated. So yeah, and another good point, like you said, on Jakob getting traded and then Devin being injured, those are also 2 key things
Mhm.
whenever it comes to that. So because of those circumstances, I think he's the obvious defensive player of the year. And I'll go ahead and start this one off with the next one, because I'm gonna pick the same player, Ethan,
Mm.
for rookie of the
Yes.
year. Obviously, Malachi had a great season, but if we're being just completely objective here, we saw Sohan's potential this season. I mean, he talked about how he just fills roles. He wasn't a scorer at all at Baylor, and he
Mhm.
was able, after, like we said, making a little bit of that transition and learning a little bit, he was able to score in bunches
Yeah.
at times. It was like it came out of nowhere, Ethan. Like, his scoring ability and the way that he was able to score, it was like, this is not something that popped up on the Baylor tape. I mean, there were a little bit of some translations, I guess you could say. But really, I mean, it was like he said in the press conferences, like, I filled roles. Like, I was supposed to be an energy guy at Baylor. Now that Pop asked me to score a little bit, I'm going to go do it. So, I mean, the fact that he was able, like, I mean, I could talk about his playmaking, the way that he puts his hands in passing lanes. His 3-point shot improved as the year went on. I know there's still a lot of work that needs to be done there, but the fact that there were improvements, that's a good sign. It just feels like he can get better everywhere. Like,
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
only way I can describe it.
Yeah, Sohan's made incredible strides during the season, stuff that I had never seen prior to this
Right.
year. To be able to get that much better in so many categories in the middle of a season is crazy. But just to give Malachi some love, I'm going to pick Malachi. I would also pick Sohan, but Malachi is a really close second because he also improved tremendously from day one. Somebody that didn't
Mm-hmm.
really get that many minutes in the first half of the season, and with the loss of a couple guys due to injury and other reasons, he was able to kind of fill in that spot as a 6-man and as a starter. He
Yeah.
developed as an outside shooter. At first, that was a struggle. It was really
Yep.
flat. He slowly tweaked it a little bit, got a little more arc on it, and he became a big threat from that range. And when we needed scoring, especially toward the end of the year, he showed us he had a lot more to his game. Stuff that he was doing in Ohio State, getting into that mid-range area, pulling up off of screens, posting up. He had a much better ball handle than I was expecting coming in at this point in the season, and a terrific finisher around the rim. He can finish among the trees. He's able to draw
Yeah.
contact and finish through contact, which
Needs
I
to
didn't
help our guy
expect.
Blake out, man.
He does need to help Blake out, and I hate to not give Blake any love here,
Right.
but he's just he was two-way for majority of the
He's
season, and he
just
just
still
still hasn't.
developing.
Yeah, but as far as rookie of the year is concerned, it's no question. It's either Sohan or Malachi, depending on what kind of flavor you're looking for.
Well, Ethan, I'm going to one up you here
Mm.
because sixth man of the year is my next
Ah,
award. And that's what I gave to Malachi. I planned it
yes,
out.
yes.
Led all rookies in scoring in February.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
for all of look, if you just look at the stats and you're like, Sohan averaged 11, Malachi averaged 10, it doesn't
Hmm.
look like much. But in the context of the Spurs system, both of these guys being 19 on the Spurs, I mean, that doesn't
Yeah.
happen. And I know that it's this season, but still, the way that both of them flourished, and you could see it was like obvious progression on the
Yes.
television screen if you watched consistently throughout the year. And the fact that it was so obvious, and they just got better in the areas that they had strengths, and it kind of showcased some strengths when they improved in certain areas. Um, like I said, there's really not much else to say. And talking about Malachi for six man, the reason I gave him six man of the year is just because he came off the bench a lot and he was our main scorer in a lot of those situations. So
Mm.
for him to run the backup point for a little bit this year as well, he had to play a lot of different roles. And while he did start this year, spent most of that time off the bench, and off the bench, sometimes he was an off ball shooter, sometimes he was the point guard. But he adapted and got better in both of those roles. So I just love him as a combo guard moving forward. And because he's 6'5", we've played him at the three a little bit. I don't think that's where he's primarily going to play, but with injuries and, maybe if we're playing a small ball team, he's also versatile in that way too.
Yeah, I would go with Malachi as well. And I already spoke to all the positives that I had to say about him. But to echo what you said, completely forgot. Pop gave him the ball and let him be a playmaker as well. And he showed, at first it was a struggle, but he showed glimpses of being able to be that sort of Manu Ginobili role. I don't think
Right.
he has that passing gift that Manu had, but to come off of screens and be able to play make for others, or find his own shot in creative ways. Definitely something that we didn't have outside of him.
Yeah, man, that the way that he comes off of screens and
Mm,
that pull up mid range jumper near the elbow
yeah.
it just turned into butter as the season went on. I love watching me some Malachi pick and rolls and some pull up jumpers. And like Swatcho Bros just said, if he gets a pull up 3-pointer, then he is going to be a lights out scorer for
Yes.
sure. All right, Ethan. Well, now we got a little bit of the fun awards. So
Okay.
the first award that I kind of made up here was the Silver and Black Award. And it's
Mm,
basically just for the most the player on the team who just embodies like all the Spurs culture. Like this is just like one of Pop's favorite players. And my guy was KBD. We talked about it earlier about the way that he's developed scoring. I mean, not only is he, he's a hassle on defense too, and he's annoying with his length. And that also translates to the offensive end. Like, I can't tell you how many times he's like holding the ball over his head, driving through people on Euro steps because he's 6'8" and he's
yeah.
super lengthy. So it's like he can, he can get to the rim on that Euro step and he's like, I'm not going to try to dribble this and, get it ripped. I'm just going to put it over my head, walk through these guys and then, drop it in the basket. So, I mean, but like you said earlier, when we got him on a two-way, he had no bag. And by the end of and even going into this year, we're like, KBD doesn't have a bag. By the end of the year, KBD has a bag. I'm like, what is going on? So shout out to Pop, shout out to the developmental staff. A lot of that has to do with what we already talked about earlier with him getting that opportunity, because of all the injuries and the circumstances this year. But
Hmm.
dude, like I said, he didn't care. He'd start, he'd sit, and it never mattered. He was going to go out and
Hmm.
play hard. So shout out to KBD.
1000% great pick. Just to pick someone different, though, I'm going to go with my point guard, Trey Jones.
There you go. That's a good
Trey
one.
Jones, I mean, unselfish, plays the right way, never makes mistakes, one of the best assist to turnover ratios in the NBA. And slowly but surely, when he had to, he could score as well. He showed us a floater that he had obviously been working on in the
Mhm.
offseason. It kind of evolved into being able to hit a little bit of mid-range jumpers. Still not a great three-point shooter, but he definitely showed some strides in that area
Yes,
as
still
well.
improved this year.
Mhm. Absolutely. And a terrific defender.
Speaking of his three-pointers, man, I gotta go back to the Austin game because that Austin
Mhm.
three-pointer that he hit at the end of the buzzer with no shot clock on a step back, that fueled the energy in the stadium and it fueled the comeback, Ethan. It was so
Mm.
good. It was so good because after that, KBD hit 2 threes. Keldon got a big bucket. They got the lead back. So, look, Trey Jones is, not the prettiest three-pointer, but he hits him when it matters and he got better. I think that's another great point or a great pick, Ethan. And the reason why, because another thing about Trey this year, when we started starting Malachi later in the year, you didn't hear no complaints from
That's
Trey.
true.
So
That's true.
it really fits that silver and black award.
And he also, and it's kind of not basketball related, but he's also always doing those like public relations events for
Right.
the Spurs,
Yep.
military,
Mm-hmm.
charities, working with the kids, whatever it is. He's always there.
Silver and black give back.
That's right.
That's
That's right.
their the team's, what is it? That's the name of their community organization. So there you go. Fits with the award. All right, Ethan, you requested before we start this that I have some other awards, but we're gonna do
Mhm.
this one.
Okay, let's do it.
That we have a most disappointing player award.
Mm.
I'm since this is your award, you go. You start.
Okay,
I think we're gonna have the same person.
probably. Well, there's a couple of ways you could go with
Okay.
this now that I'm looking at it, but I'm gonna go with who I was thinking of earlier, and that's Isaiah Roby. Um,
Oh, okay. I'm thinking still people on the team.
you are
That's
okay.
what I was thinking. But I mean, you could go with him. He was on the roster.
Well, the only reason I was going with Isaiah
Yeah,
Roby
please
is
explain because you
we
already said it.
earlier in the year when we were doing preseason
Right.
previews, we both thought he has a chance to start at power forward.
Yes.
Because this is before we thought Sohan was going to get any minutes. We are like, at least backup because he has all these different intangibles and skill sets that we don't really have. We both agreed, like, better than KBD.
Had more NBA minutes
Yeah,
like at that point.
we're like, I can't understand why he was cut. And no
Right.
disrespect, but he literally was awful all year. Like to the point where for a tanking team, we could not play him. Like we had to
We had
go
to
get
call Barlow.
we got Stanley Johnson and Dominic Barlow. We were like playing anybody over this guy, and it was so upsetting for me because I was like, this guy he could be
Do
a
you remember what
potential
Pop
piece.
said?
What did he say?
He was like, I was surprised. In the preseason, he was like, yeah, and we picked him up. I was surprised by what I saw. He was like basically like kind of giving him a shout out
Mhm.
in like the training camp press conference. He was like,
Oh,
he could put the ball on the floor. He's got some mobility. He can shoot. And I was like, oh yeah, this is
yeah.
that's it. We were eating it up.
And he ended up being not on the team, like he said. So,
Oh my gosh. Well, do you want to do somebody on the team or do you want me to get mine?
uh, who was I gonna go? Oh, I was gonna say Romeo Langford also.
That's who I was gonna say.
Yeah,
Oh man, it's just like when you saw him have some momentum, like has a couple of good games here and there, then he just disappears. And it
rough.
was like for the rest of the year, even when he did came in, he wouldn't really do much. Oh, poor Romeo, man. Like he really, not only did we not think he was gonna make the team, he proved us wrong there. And then he kind of gave us a little bit of hope. But
Mm-hmm.
then as the season progressed, it was just like when they put him in, those good performances that we saw they just didn't happen. And it wasn't
Yeah.
even like he was necessarily doing anything bad. He played well in that Austin game, had some good blocks. Like without him, like it would have been tough to win that one. Because at least he's somebody you can put out there who's like competent and isn't going to be like, he like we could play him a lot more than Roby.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were
For
just
sure.
talking about him, right? Like, but it just still,
Well,
no,
offensively, he had no impact.
yeah.
It might as well have been you or me out there, Jude. To be honest.
He had some games where he had like 20, but I mean, it was like all of those were kind of like champagne buckets. You know what I mean? Like they were
Yeah.
either cuts under the rim and then he'd like hit a three every once in a while.
Or it hit the side of the backboard.
Yeah, it was
I
either
mean,
like it would go in or it was bad.
you know who also could be up for this award?
Who?
He's not on the team anymore. Alize Johnson.
Was he on like? Did we have him at the beginning of the? Yeah, he was on a
Yeah, he
two-way.
was always on the team until
Oh
we
my
finally
gosh.
get rid of him. I'm just joking though.
I don't.
He's
Is there anybody else that I can think of?
everyone
Who's like
else I
still?
thought played
That's
pretty
what I was
much
going.
up
I mean,
to
you could say
par.
Blake, but like I feel like that's just too like it's
Yeah,
different because
no,
he's a
yeah.
rookie. Like
What hurts is it felt like to me only three guys. Three guys were yanked during the season. Only three. Like you know how Pop
this is a
always
good one from Swatch Bros. Shout
Jordan
out
Hall.
Jordan Hall.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But he never really played bad. He was just kind of like,
But think
eh.
about it. Like at the end of the year, we had Champagny on his contract.
Yeah, yeah. We definitely improved.
Like,
We replaced
upgraded.
Alize and Jordan with Mamu and Champagny, who are
And
way
technically
better.
Charles Bassey
And
too.
Massey, yeah.
Yeah, man. Anyways, back to what you're saying.
Yeah, only like Pop only really yanked three guys during the season. Like as bad as we
Hmm.
played, only three guys played bad enough to get yanked from the game. And to me, that was Isaiah Roby, Blake Wesley, and Romeo. And Blake's really the only one that has any reason, like an
Yeah.
excuse, because he's a
Yeah.
rookie.
Right. And he's 19. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
rough. Poor guys.
So that's our most disappointing player award. But I got a bucket getter award, Ethan, and
Mm,
I gave this to two Spurs who I've already given. Actually, I haven't given one of them an award. One of them I already have given an award, but I just had to give it to him. The bucket getter award goes to Devin Vassell and Malachi Branham. And it's just because of the way this year that I felt like when you look at our roster, the two dudes who have the best shot creation skills that I saw on tape, even though Malachi's a rookie, I put him above Keldon. I love Keldon, but like Keldon, he uses there's a reason he's got the nickname Big Body. He uses that
yeah.
a little bit when he goes and scores. Devin and Malachi this year, the way that they found their spots, whether it's through Malachi coming off the screen and finding some space near the elbow, or it's Devin Vassell hitting a hop step, step back, in space in the mid range. Both of those guys were they were able to create their own shot and just go get a bucket. And obviously the Spurs, we love our ball movement. That's the most important thing is running the sets. Having a lot of motion, ball speed, all that good stuff, right? And lots of passes. But sometimes you just need to go get a bucket, and that's the element that these guys bring. And I loved, Devin kind of. I mean, it was just like, wow, this is something we haven't seen before. And then Malachi, we got to see it get better as the year progressed.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. It got mini Chris Middleton in Devin Vassell, and then you have mini Steve Smith in Malachi Branham. So, by far the best shot creators.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, I got another award for us, Ethan, and that is the Hidden Gem Award. And at
Mm,
first I was only going to do two guys, but actually I'm going to end up throwing three guys in here just because it would be wrong not to. And that's just the three dudes that we ended up picking up after cutting some other people. It starts with Charles Bassey, picking him up from the Philadelphia 76ers. We saw what he did in the G League, ended up getting the G League Next Up game. That was out of nowhere. He was playing with the Delaware Bluecoats before the season. We got him on a two-way. Now he's a long-term Spur, signed a 4-year deal with us, right?
mm-hmm.
Definitely a hidden gem, came out of nowhere. Swiped him from Philly. The second is, of course, our boy Mamu, Sandro Mamukelishvili. I don't think this was a swipe. I think this was just pure collusion between
Mm-hmm.
Budenholzer and Popovich, because he is just like from the Mamu to being Georgian American to his play style to being ingrained in European basketball and kind of having that style of play. He's just like, this dude is a Spur. It's so
Yeah,
obvious. I mean, like, there's nothing else I can say. We made comparisons to Bobo. Hopefully he can achieve something close to what Boris was for the Spurs, but he really has a lot of that flavor that reminds us of Boris with his passing ability, his sauciness. Like, that's just the only way I can describe it, and being able to shoot. So love that pickup for the Spurs. And then, of course, another Delaware Blue Coat, the G League champs, Ethan. We were taken from the G League champs. I don't
yes,
know
we
if you
were.
know, they swept the Vipers, the Rio Grande Valley Vipers. Boo Rockets. They're losing everywhere. Um
Oh
But
my god.
Julian Champagnie had multiple near 40-point games for the Delaware Bluecoats. We pick him up, and by the end of the year, he's got a couple 20-pointers where he's just pulling up in people's faces, man. Like, um, just those three guys, shout out to the front office, because the fact that we picked up those three dudes this season, while at one point having Jordan Hall, Alize Johnson, and as much as I love my boy Stanley, we really liked him this year. I would pick all of these three guys. Like, if I had to, I would pick all of these three guys over him just because of their age. I
Yeah.
mean, Charles Bassey is 22, Sandro Mamukelashvili is 23, and then Julian Champagnie is 21 and a rookie.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I know y'all got some comments in there. We're going to get to those, but I just want to wrap up this award segment for us. So I'll do this one. You said you gave Trey the silver and black award. So I had one award for him because I had to give him an award, and that's just the true PG award. Because really, when you look at the roster, and now at least at the end of the season, well, even before the end of the season, he was the only true point guard on the team this year.
Oh, Jordan
Because Jordan, because Blake is not there yet, and he's more of a combo guard anyway. Kind of came out of Notre Dame as more of a scorer. Kind of like Tony Parker, DeJounte. So Blake's gonna have some development, but got to give a shout out to Trey for just being a distributor all season long, holding it down, running the Spurs offense and running the Spurs system, because that's so huge, and it's not easy to do, especially this year. Under Pop, that's just a tough task for this season. So got to give him a shout out there. But then the last two that I got, Ethan, they're called the Perseverance Award, and I'm gonna give it to Blake Wesley and Dominic Barlow, because no matter what, they kept going out there and playing. Because there's a lot of stuff that could have, like, in all seriousness, I know we like to joke about them a lot, but like, when you're in the NBA and you're a 19-year-old, like, skinny kid like them, I'm sure it's really easy to get discouraged and, like, like, down on yourself. You got Pop yelling at you. The fact that you keep showing up, like, and for as much as Blake struggled, really throughout the entire year, we did see some improvement from him just in his decision making. Like, you could put him out on the floor for extended periods of time and it wasn't just going to explode, like there were improvements for Blake. Obviously, you could say because of the last season of the year and the 12-10-5 game and the 21-19 game from Dom, you could say that maybe you saw a little bit more from him just in that last stretch of the season. But the point is, both of these guys had some real tough moments at the beginning of the year. And Dom had some tough moments that it seemed like, okay, he looked a little bit better, and then he just looked awful for a while, but then ended the season super strong. So I felt like this Perseverance Award for our two kind of Austin Spurs, if you will. I just, had to give a shout out to them for keeping on.
Both very deserving players. But I'm going to go with a long-term perseverance here. My boy, Zach Collins.
I like it.
He has had the roughest time the past, like, 3 or 4 years. And for him to not get discouraged, to continue to rehab, to get a contract with the Spurs that was really team friendly. Like, we could have waived him. Yeah, White King. We could have waived him pretty much at any time without any guaranteed money. And he didn't let that get him down. He was basically hurt when we signed him. He overcame that injury. He rehabbed. He played in the G League. He didn't fuss about having to go back to the G League for a little bit. He came back to the Spurs. He was put through hell in a handbasket those first couple months where he was just ragdolled and pushed around. He would play 3 minutes and have 6 fouls. And he had every reason to basically just say, okay, I'm done. Whatever. I'll forever be just a third string center. But we traded Jakob Poeltl. He took the opportunity, and he became a really, really great center for us, both as a scorer and as a much improved defender. He's no longer getting ragdolled. He's a terrific three-point shooter. He showed us incredible playmaking, some face-up ability, and it was really a long-term project for him. I'm so happy that he was able to kind of rekindle his career with the Spurs, and it sounds like you said, according to Pop, it's going to be a long-term career with the Spurs. Hopefully, knock on wood.
Right. You know what I'm just realizing, Ethan? I think I missed an award. I missed Most Improved Player, because
Mm.
that's Zach Collins. And I was texting you before the game or before our stream today, like, I'm going to give this to KBD. And then I realized there's no way I can give this to KBD. It's going to Zach
Yes,
Collins because
yes.
not just because of, I mean, and obviously we love KBD. He improved a lot this year too, but
Mm.
Zach just had a bigger role. And
Yeah.
it grew even more when we traded Jakob. The way that he improved physically, we went from at the beginning of the year being like he's like a string bean in the paint. We were basically saying that at the beginning of the year to saying he can hold his own, and he was blocking shots. Started to become a little bit of a shot blocker at the end of the season. So the way that Zach has improved. Just his entire offensive game, scoring at all three levels. We've seen mid-range jumpers. We know he has the post game that really showcased at the end of the year. And then, of course, his three-point shooting, on top of the fact that his interior defense, and I would say even glimpses, just his defensive stance on the perimeter
Yeah,
has
you're right.
gotten better as well. So I know I just basically said every part of his game there, but that's the point. And that's kind of the Spurs development. Also, his passing ability. Haven't mentioned that either. We saw a lot more 5-assist games in the second half of the year. Not much else to say about Zach. He overcame a ton to get to this point, and his ceiling that you and I thought like might be, maybe this is the ceiling right now where he's at. Like I said, with what Pop was insinuating, it seems like that's a lot higher. So I love what I saw from Zach this year, and I'm excited to watch him on the Spurs moving forward.
And about to get a bag.
Yep, for sure. Our man Rock Lee says, "Shout out from SM, go Cats." Ethan loves that.
Eat 'em up, baby.
We appreciate it. Our man Greg Castillo says, "Dude barely could dribble and turnover king in the beginning to elite backup and then good starter all in one season.
Yeah,
It was
for real.
wild." Great insight there from Greg on Zach and his improvement. All right, there were some other comments up here that I wanted to get. Okay, so this one I saw. Our man Michael Bohm, he said, "Late to the party," or Bame. Thank you.
It's my boy.
For correcting me.
You're
Late
welcome.
to the party, but how does the play-in decide that SA Houston tie-in? Not tie-in. So I wish I could answer your question. And you may have watched the video earlier today, which is why you're asking this. And I'm not really sure yet. But what I do know is in Bobby Marks's article, it doesn't even necessarily specify that it's like relating to the odds, but it's also like there's nothing else that it could be talking about, if that makes sense. Y'all go watch the video or go to ESPN Plus and check it out to see more. But the point is he wrote a little note, and it says that San Antonio's tie with Houston will be decided through the play-in. So I don't know how it's going to be decided. I need to definitely look into that. I tried to look into it a little bit more today. I didn't find anything. But it seems like depending on how some of these play-in games turn out, basically the Spurs lottery odds could jump up to 2, which would mean that the Spurs wouldn't have a chance of getting the 7th pick. So we'll see. But it mainly, I wish I could give you more details there, but it's only really been mentioned in the article, and he didn't go into more detail. But I just know that like there's been times where there's been like, I guess you could say, understandings of things that I had, and then I go read his articles, and it's like, oh, it's actually a little bit different. 2K doesn't always tell the story, man. They get it wrong sometimes. Like I can't cut Devontae Graham in 2K and not be responsible for his contract. But in real life, if I cut him before July 30th, we don't have to pay him anything. You see what I'm saying, Ethan? Bobby Marks will tell you the real stuff, not 2K.
Gotcha. You're right.
No, I really wish I had an answer for that, but I don't know, unfortunately. But that's something to pay attention to, because apparently that could be a possibility. I thought that we were just locked in to the third most odds, but it seems very obvious, or it seems like that's what he's alluding to there.
Mm-hmm.
Our man Hanova Fist One said, "What's your favorite Spurs moment of the year?"
Man, I love a good fight, man. I'm a Rumble lover.
That was Hanova's too.
Was it? Which one was it? Did he
Look.
say? Oh yeah,
Zach
I wasn't a huge fan of that one.
For elbow on the Westbrook was his fave for those on podcast.
That was probably my least favorite fight because that wasn't like intentional. Like they didn't really want to go at it. He just accidentally hit Russ.
Russ just got mad.
Yeah, and nobody really like went at it. It was just like confusion for a second. I think my favorite one was I like Sohan and Morris, Markeef when on
Yeah.
the Nets when they were kind of chipping at each other, and then Morris ran into a screen right that Sohan was setting, and he like really hit Sohan for no reason, and then Sohan like pulled him over with like a UFC grappling move. Yeah, it was, and then Zach got in there in between them, and Stanley was involved. I like those kind of fights, or even the Zach going after Michael Porter Jr. Like Zach was always in on something, bro. I love
Right.
Zach Collins for getting into that kind of stuff.
Okay, so our man Swatcho Bros might have an explanation for us. So he said, I believe the positions for teams with the same record in the lottery is decided by a coin flip, and that coin flip takes place after the plan. Thank you so much, Swatcho
Oh,
Bros. So there you go, people. There you go, Michael. So that explains it there. I'm glad that I at least knew that Bobby Marks was referring
mm.
to this, because I wasn't like it wasn't like explicit, but I was like, there's nothing else this could be talking about. But so keep an eye on this coin flip. We have no control.
Please God, I'm gonna go to church next Sunday,
Oh my God. That's good.
and I'm gonna go to temple on Saturday.
Oh my gosh. What was I gonna say? I'm completely losing my train of thought here. Oh, favorite Spurs moment of the
Yes,
season.
favorite
Okay,
Spurs moment.
so this is kind of this involves Zach too and a fight. But this is just because I was there. The Denver game where Zach and Michael Porter got
Oh
into it,
yeah,
because
yeah,
that
yeah.
was also the Mamu breakout game.
Yes,
Because
it was.
If Zach doesn't get teed up and get thrown out, Mamu doesn't come in and like surprise Jokic and cook him kind of like, and the reason that he cooked him is one, because Jokic, that's kind of Jokic on defense, but
Mhm.
two, because this dude wasn't on the scouting report. He was expecting to play Zach Collins. So if Zach doesn't get ejected, like, we probably don't win that game against the 1 seed. So the fact that it was an upset over the 1 seed and we were at the bottom of the league, combined with the fact that there was a big fight and Mamu kind of got to break out, and I was there and had great seats, that's my favorite moment.
And I was at which game was I at, Jude, where we had the
Utah,
most incredible comeback?
Utah, I think.
I
No,
was at
maybe.
Utah, but it was a different one that I'm thinking of. It was more recent. Was it Atlanta? Oh
Mm.
yeah, it was Atlanta.
Yes, yes, and that was what that's what Greg said, beating the Hawks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was a great one. Great moment.
Tell me about it. Just reminisce on it a little bit, since it's the end of the season live.
Dude, energy was absolutely crazy. I remember texting you and my buddy David. I was like, I haven't felt the energy level of the AT&T Center like that since like 2016 when we were going for it. You know, we were the second
Mhm.
best team in the West and we thought we were going to win the championship. That's the last time it felt like that. But I guess
Yeah.
the crowd came out to see DJ and it was a warm reception. There was no booze really, so there wasn't any bad blood necessarily, but Keldon was hyping up the crowd. Devin was hitting step back threes and taking dribble handoffs from Keldon into the corner, jump stop, 3-pointer fading away, just knocking them down. It was so great, so hype, bro. And usually for at least for the games that I go to like only teams that are like pretty like I never go to the game when the team is like bad necessarily. So usually there's a lot of fans for the opposition, especially this past season because we've been so bad. Like we played the
Yeah.
Lakers and it was like 60% Lakers fans, which
Right.
sucks. But this game was like 95% Spurs
Mhm.
fans. So it was just next level.
Dude, heck yeah. That was a fun one. We all got to go to some good games this year.
We
You got to
did.
go to some good ones, and dude, I got to go to all 3 places. Like, I got to go to the Alamo Dome game, and then my other 2 games, dude, that was a blowout, but it was the Alamo Dome, so it was
Yeah, that's a good
incredible.
moment.
And then I got to see Denver and the Blazers game, dude. Like, I got spoiled, bro. Like,
You did.
not only did I get a 2-1 record in this season, which is crazy, like, which is a good draw, but on top of that, like, the Denver game, crazy comeback, and the Blazers game, crazy comeback win.
Mm.
So I think I need to go to more games, Ethan.
You should. You went to the
That's
one. Yeah, I'll never forget this because I'm so pissed that you got to go to this game. You were basically on the court when
Oh
Keldon just
yeah, last year I still
baptized
have
Grant
that.
Williams. Oh
I
my
still have
god!
that up here. I wish I would turn my iMac and show
No,
y'all.
that's
It's a
cool.
little.
That's
I don't
cool.
want to mess up the stream, but I still got a Fiesta Nights from November 26th, 2021 against the Boston Celtics when we beat them with DeJounte and Derek before the
Hmm.
trade. Oh, and I was there with 2 Celtics fans, like
Oh,
basically courtside. It was so fun, dude. It was so fun.
that I'll never
That
forgive
was
you for that
last
one.
year, but that was a great one. But yeah, Hey, I go to a lot of wins,
You
Ethan.
do. You do go to some dubs. I forgot about this one too, but I went to the Bulls game in like January. That was when Blake had like his first game or something like that, and he played really well, surprisingly, and it was kind of downhill
Mhm.
from there. But
Right.
um, that one was crazy because it was the only game this year that DeMar played in San Antonio, and
Mhm.
being the 50th anniversary year, we played the memorial tribute video to DeMar because he was the player that came back, right? And he's
Wait, so did we honor DeMar on that night?
well, every game we honored somebody
Right,
different.
so we
Yeah,
just honored DeMar because
DeMar. Yeah.
that's awesome.
And he watched the video, and like I was never that in love with Demar. Like I do love Demar for what he did for us and
Yeah,
being such a professional, but like he wasn't like my personal favorite during that stand.
yeah.
But watching him watch that video and hug Pop after that, and then walk on the court for tip off, and he walked over to the Spurs logo on the HEB zone side, and he bent down and he touched it. And
Aw.
I was like, dude, that hit me like right here in the
Yeah, that
heart,
hits
bro. I was
me
like, oh
too,
man,
man. Like for all the crap that this is kind of just a different rant, but like for all the crap that DeMar had to go through, like and this might have not been the best situation that fit his play style and all that
yeah,
type of stuff. Like I'm glad, and obviously we're Spurs fans, so we're gonna be, kind of Spurs colors glasses here. But I'm glad he got to come to us where it was like, look, we're gonna take care of you. I know
yeah,
this may
yeah.
not be where you want to be right now, and this your life kind of got thrown upside down with this trade out of nowhere after your GM just told you he's never going to trade you, but like we're going to take care of you, bro. Don't worry.
Mm,
And you could tell it still meant something to him with what you were just talking about.
for sure, for
So,
sure.
our man Rock Lee in the comments says, "Y'all talk about my boy Dom B. He's the truth." Yes. Shout out Rock Lee. Shout out Dominic Barlow,
Mm.
man. We were talking about him a little bit earlier. If you want to go watch a whole video on him, go to our videos tab. And like a month ago, I did like a whole overview on this article of him. Um, you know, Still love the potential with him. Got
Yeah,
got to showcase that with against the Mavs. And I don't mean to say this like in a disrespectful way, but like I'm trying to make a good point here. I swear, he was kind of playing against more of a G League team in that game, and that's why he had those numbers. But if you go look at his stats in the Austin Spurs before the end of the year, those were the type of numbers he was putting up. In him and Blake's last game before they just called him back for good, Blake had 30 and Dom had 26 and 11. Now, yes, he didn't have 21 and 19, and still because it's at an NBA setting, it is a good thing and it's more impressive. Despite the roster, like the point is that's who he is. Like he can be like that against that level of competition. It's just taking that next step. So I still like Dom. And when my belief in him started to waver, he made improvements, and we saw the good stuff. We saw him improve. So um,
he's
you know
playing for you, Jude.
he reinforced my belief. I love what I saw from Dom.
He's gonna get JM tattooed on his wrist, and he's gonna like touch it every time he shoots a
Should
free
be
throw or
like,
something.
this dude believes in me. He's been here for me
Since day one,
since day one.
he
No, but
he disappointed you one time, and you just about jumped off the Titanic. I remember that.
he's back.
He's
He's
back.
back
He's
though.
back.
That's what matters. But yeah, just always intrigued with the overtime elite thing. We're gonna see more and more players coming out of there, and I hope he works out for us
The
for
next
sure.
Kevin Garnett.
But I do agree with what Hanover says. He needs more size. Just put on some weight. He's got the height. Get a little bit more muscle, and we'll love to see the improvement. Greg says that Dom has a Drew Eubank stats.
Everyone should have one. I have one as well.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's what we all needed. Shout out to Basketball and Brew in the comments, another podcast I produce with Dan Miller, head coach of the San Marcos Rattlers. He gets some great people on the podcast. You want to check that out. People from Houston, LSU, all over.
Oh, wow.
But he asked what my take was on the Moody Center. I did talk about it a little bit, but we'll always make time for you, Coach Miller. Just once again, like I said earlier, I mean, if y'all haven't been to the Moody Center, y'all got to check it out. And I sometimes am not the biggest Texas fan, but I will say to you right now, like that stadium and facility is incredible. I had such a good time. I hope the Spurs do it again. Brand new, beautiful. And such a great environment, like I mentioned earlier. I love the intimacy of it, and it still felt like an NBA game. even though we were in a little bit of a smaller venue, but a gorgeous one. So I loved it. Hope the I-35 series keeps happening.
Mm.
Our man Hanover, he said earlier he was at the Timberwolves game and he enjoyed it as well. So love that. Any final thoughts here, Ethan, on the Spurs season? We've done a good hour.
Man, it was a tough one,
Yeah.
but a memorable one. I'm glad that I was here for this because in 5 years when we win our second championship,
We're going to be remembering
we'll
this.
be remembering this. And Don Barlow gets that finals MVP averaging 26, 11, and 11. And we'll be like, Jude, remember that day that we were like, oh,
you didn't believe in him?
Yeah, he's lost and all that. But in all seriousness, it is cool to see a rebuild literally for the first time in my life. And I'm just excited to see what these guys are able to do in the years to come, especially with a potential top 3 pick coming next season.
Absolutely, Ethan. I couldn't have said it better myself. I think the thing that I'll leave everybody with is just like you said, like for us, we're in our 20s. So like we grew up watching these, like the Tim Duncan, the Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili Spurs. We grew up watching like the Spurs dynasty, so we didn't have a non-playoff season until last year.
Playoffs? Sorry.
No, that's a good one, right? So I really appreciated like this season in the fact that like, it wasn't always about winning. Obviously, at the end of the day, the NBA is about winning. Like everything that the Spurs are doing right now is to win in the long-term future. But at the end of the day, like I said, it was kind of nice to just, hey, let's see like these little areas that these guys are getting better at. Yeah, we're not going to win a lot of games. They're going to make some mistakes, but it was really cool to like watch Malachi and Sohan and even Devin and Keldon to some extent, just get to play like that number one role. And with Devin, even though he got injured, we got to see him, he looks like a different player out there when it comes to his scoring. Obviously, Keldon put up the numbers that, a star player should. I could go down the list, but like those moments, like if we didn't have this season the way that it is, Ethan, like that Denver game that I went to, wasn't gonna mean as much. Like it wouldn't have been as cool, with Mamu coming in because we wouldn't have even picked him up. So, like the same goes for the Trailblazers game that I went to. Like, I mean, normally those circumstances wouldn't have been as entertaining, but I was a little bit more used to it because I'd been watching the Spurs team all year. So I could go on and on, but there were a lot of things that, like in past seasons growing up, you wouldn't necessarily appreciate because it was just like championship win, all the time. I got to appreciate a lot of those things this year.
Absolutely. And one last thing. Shout out to Jakob Poeltl. Shout out to Devontae Graham. Shout out to Doug McDermott. Shout out to Josh Richardson for being the vets on the squad. Good luck to Boston. Derek White, always rooting for him. Good luck to the Raptors. Jakob Poeltl. The Hawks, DeJounte Murray. Who else am I missing?
Our boy Jakob.
I already said Jakob with the Raptors.
Okay.
I said DJ. I said Derek. Josh Richardson with the Pelicans. Good luck to him. I hope they all. The Raptors and Hawks are playing each other, so and we have both of their future picks. So honestly,
just beat each other.
we win either way. So good luck to both of them.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank y'all for hanging out with us today. We do truly appreciate it. We're going to be pumping out the draft content, all that type of stuff. It's now full off-season mode, so be out on the lookout for those. We're going to have some other stuff coming out for sure that isn't just draft, but just off-season stuff. So now we get into all the fun, speculative, free reign type of stuff, if you will, when it comes to free agents, all that type of stuff, Ethan. So if you enjoyed today's content, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe below. You can follow us on Twitter. You can watch the show on Twitter at SSPN on YT if you prefer to. You can also stay updated with the show at Jude McLaren, at Ethan_Quintero to find out when the next episode is, all that good stuff. We appreciate y'all. We'll catch y'all on the next one, and we'll see y'all later. Go Spurs, go.